Hello, Bruce.
Hi, Roy.
Hi, Bruce. How are you?
Good to see you. Let me.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get
You're extremely punctual. The German news coming through.
I'm still trying to get my camera, everything going here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if this was going to be a webinar where you're on camera or if it's just going to be, speaker talking, but
Well, yeah, I always share this screen and I like to have it a little more lively, webinars as I could basically just run a tape. So I kind of like the idea of having everybody in there communicate a little openly, especially if it's smaller groups. And I generally have groups like 8-ish, between 8 and 12. And then if it's more, hey, nice.
Right, yeah.
And if it's more, I just split them up in general because this is running on. I'm also saying hello to Gabriele Manzoni, I guess, and Natasha Murphy. Thank you. We're getting a few more, and we'll be waiting like about not much longer than 2 or 3 minutes and then getting started. Some people, hi, Natasha. Hi, ciao, Gabriele. And Takako Imai. Very nice. We're quite a mix here. Brilliant. Like it. Can everybody hear me? If you can hear me, raise your hand or give me a thumbs up.
I can.
Brilliant. Oh yeah, I hear you too. Great. Hi, Natasha. Okay, where are you?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I hear you well. Let me just turn this up a little bit, but yes, I hear you well. No, now I can't. What happened there?
Here now.
Now, great, yeah.
I'm in UK.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I'm in Bristol right now. I'll be here for a little while. So
Good.
And Gabriele, where can we find you? Where are you calling in from? I think you're muted. I cannot hear you. No. Or you can put it in the chat. Maybe your microphone is not working. No problem anyway. We have a few more registrations, but
Can you hear me?
oh, now I hear you. Buongiorno.
Oh, grazie.
Grazie. Where are you?
Close to Milan.
Ah, okay. Wonderful. Yeah. Everything's better than the UK today, I think. And of course, we don't have to talk Bruce about it because living in LA, I mean, the weather report must be the most boring thing, but in a good way.
Well, to be honest, by the coast, everything is socked in with a marine layer, cloudy. But if you go inland to the valleys, it's a 90, almost 100 degrees.
Yeah.
So I'm 70 degrees now, or 69. This is Fahrenheit, of course.
Yeah. Well, but we all know the marine layer will burn off by 12 or 1, I guess.
And some days it does, and some days it's very stubborn. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
we have this monsoonal moisture that comes in, and we get some sort of almost like I won't say hurricane weather, but it comes up from the south with a lot of moisture. So lots of rain. There were lightning strikes that killed people who were walking their dog the other day.
All right, I saw that. Yeah. But on the other hand, Bruce, you know how much time I spend in LA, so I'm not taking any serious complaints from people in LA about the weather, especially not when I'm in the UK.
Right.
But great seeing you here anyway. Okay, and Takako Imai, I hope you can hear me. And
yes, I can hear you very well. Sorry, because I mess around, so I don't want to show my face.
No problem at all. No, totally. We know how it is with a camera, so we don't insist on anything. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, Takako. Yes, I'm
brilliant. And you are where, if I may ask?
Oh yes, I'm in London, UK. So same country. We are in
all around the corner, more or less. Yeah.
Yes.
And we have Marina Schron coming in also. He signed in. And hi, Marina. You're muted, but we're going to be starting in about 1 minute
Oh,
anyway.
yes. Hi, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No problem at all. Yeah. Where are you, if I may ask?
New York City.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. So we got LA, New York, Milan, Italy, and London, UK. So we're pretty much all over. We have another few registrants, but we always start, and I always find it very unfair to let the ones that are punctual wait. So if they come in, they can join us later, and they will. And we're just going to get started right away. Like I briefly said, Bruce and I, we've known each other for, well, what, more than a decade by now. So he knows pretty much what we're going to do, I think, and we're going to keep this very casual and friendly. If there's anything coming up, especially because we have smaller groups, most of the time it's very convenient. We can keep this very open. But I'll start with a run through, and then we just take it from there. And I always take a lot of pride in constantly updating these presentations. So there are some things that are very current. And as you will see, there might be some other things coming up. If you have anything that you would like to include or know more about, we will also be doing a Q&A after we're done with the intro and with the kickoff today. Okay. So I still am waiting for this thing. It always takes 3 clicks, and I will never learn that. But let's get started. All right. If you will not take anything out of this presentation, or even if you're inclined to take the whole seminar eventually, anything else, there is always 3 things that you can take away that will probably help you everywhere. And I call them my 3 rules of the industry life. Of course, mine is not quite correctly. I have to give credit where credit is due. And the first one, of course, is William Goldman. You might remember him. First of all, he wrote a fantastic book, which is almost required reading for everybody in the film business. He also got several Academy Award nominations, and he wrote the scripts for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Okay, Natasha, I just agreed. You wanted a live transcript? Okay. So William Goldman, Butch Cassidy Kid, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, also All the President's Men, and countless other very, very well-known and well-written scripts. So nobody knows anything basically sums up everything you need to know about the film business if you only have 15 seconds. Fortunately, we have a little longer today, so we also get to Rule 2. Which is actually mine, and the people who've been to some of my either seminars, some of the presentations or talks, or what I did for Open University are already totally, in a good way, annoyed by it, because I keep reiterating attorney, attorney, attorney. And we can basically add that to any slide. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to torture you too much today. But the basic rule of thumb is to anything that you're doing, have an attorney look over it, have it done and verified by an attorney. And whenever you need to sign anything, check with an attorney, which is also one of the advantages if you take the whole seminar, for example. I've seen that and I can prove it. I got a few good reviews for that. It saves a fortune, because if you consider that your attorney probably charges you $500 for the hour, if you know what to ask him, what to look out for, you can probably save a lot of his and your precious time. The last one finally is, and that is pretty universal in my opinion, what's your motivation? Which was basically a phrase that came along in the actor studio for method acting and for putting somebody into the mindset of the Dr. Freud, of the person they are portraying. I found that extremely helpful, especially, for example, in any kind of negotiation. Because if you know what's the motivation for somebody to either hint at something, to ask for something, or to maybe even stop the calls or stop the conversation, if you know what the motivation is, that will certainly help you greatly. So those are the 3 basic things, and We will then be getting, and we will have the same overview today, but in the intensive seminar series, we will be going into the details about the following 6 topics. First of all, grants, fellowships, and labs. There are a lot of ways, and especially if you're raising money for a film or you've been trying that for a long, long time, it might be quite frustrating at times, or always, depends on your attitude a little bit too. But it is definitely a hard job, there's no doubt about that. But there is an incredible amount of opportunities and money out there that you can get access to if you know how to, and also where to look for it. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking briefly about fellowships and labs, for example. Of course, we all probably know Sundance being one of the most liked and most successful ones also. We will also look at how to decide and to see what you will have to look out for, if you can even have the time, for example, or if you can even gain access to that, because a lot of them are, of course, for students and people breaking new into the business. But we'll be talking about that in detail. We'll also be supplying you with a list. Second part of the segment will be development hell. I'm a very positive and optimistic kind of guy. That's why I put the hell in brackets. But all of us who have been there know why it's called development hell. We will also then talk about finance structures and all the different kinds of financing sources that are out there. One of the top opportunities there, of course, is referring to the tax incentives and tax credits that you can get pretty much anywhere in the world, I can almost say by now. I will get into a little bit more detail with 2 slides during the course of this presentation. And during the seminar, we will be going in depth here in all of the opportunities that you have, several things to look out for, and of course, already cutting into some parts of Hollywood accounting, because those credits and tax incentives and all the variety are a fantastic source of either starting with the financing of your project or making the first returns possible for your investors. Also kind of softening the risk for them by some money that is guaranteed to come in, regardless of the potential success of your movie. And the last double segment will be distribution, sales agents, and briefly producers rep. That thing goes a lot already into the changing situation that we have these days, especially regarding the streamers. And as you will see, we will be going through that in this demonstration and presentation too, the ever-changing situation in the market. The last 2 years have probably, and certainly in my 20-some years, the years with the most and incredible changes, like we've probably never seen before, even when, for example, video came out or DVD, the internet, all of those were major changes. But the incredible waves that have been happening in the last 3 years are something that I haven't seen. And I started giving presentations quite some time ago because I was working with several institutions 2 decades ago. You could probably use your same slides for quite some time. With these presentations right now, you're starting with the Open University and Diversity in Cannes and several other presentations that I've given, I have had to almost update every few months, sometimes even almost weekly. But this one is pretty much updated too. And of course, things will happen and we'll keep an eye on that too. So we'll be looking at the distribution, at the different ways, including self-distribution, and of course, also renting the studios, plus all of that. There's several shapes, several ways, and you will probably be surprised by the variety of outcome and by how it might be a whole lot better to distribute your movie yourself, even including Facebook advertising and something else and making some kind of profit, as opposed to running after 50 to 100 million P&A, prints and advertising, that gets spent and lets your movie end up in the red. talking about in the red, that is basically the central point of Hollywood Accounting 1 and 2. So it's basically almost a 7-part seminar that we're given. You will be seeing how 10 movies, including Star Wars, including a Harry Potter movie, including My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and 10 movies, if I mention them to you, that you would gladly say you would like to be invested in them. And that includes me too. I would like to be there too. But if you only get net profits, you will get absolutely zero. We have a couple of very drastic examples. We have a couple of fine examples, and that is probably most valuable for you, a lot of tips, tricks, and especially the traps that you have to look out for. So let's get on it and briefly start with the market. This basically dates back, dates back is kind of hard because we're not doing a history lesson and I'm not going to waste your time with numbers. But this is pre-COVID and before COVID hit. At that time, China was the second largest market, had about $9 billion in box office, and had an annual accrued interest and growth rate, of about 9%, meaning about almost in 10 years, everything would have more than doubled if you take the compound interest rate. The United States have a growth rate, but they've had that over decades, of about 4.85%, and was expecting revenues of about 12 billion, 11.4 billion for 2018, 2019. The highest grossing movie back then was Avengers Endgame with almost $3 billion. So those were very, very healthy numbers. And global box office was expected to continue growing, of course, and expected to reach 50 billion by the end of 2020. Just to give you an idea of the need for content, because sometimes we think, okay, maybe content is not king anymore. Forget about it. Content is king, will be king, was king, and is continuing to be king. And you will see that when I put that in context with some of the current situations in regards to the streamers, for example. So it's a $280 billion market, and actually anticipated for the next couple of years is already 400 billion of content that is needed out there. Coming back to the $50 billion that were expected, of course, that did not happen in 2020, thanks to COVID. And fortunately, things look a whole lot brighter by now. When COVID happened, and I started doing a lot of these seminars because, of course, as you know, everything was shutting down then, I installed something which was called a COVID jar. When we had seminars, when we had business meetings, Zoom conferences or whatever, instead of a swear jar, when anybody brought the topic to COVID, except for when we needed it, somebody had to put 5 pounds in there. Unfortunately, I did not follow through with that, but I can tell you I'd be a millionaire just with that jar by now, because you can imagine, you've been there, we've all been there, and the topic came up anytime, anywhere. So fortunately, things have changed a little bit by now. But then, of course, it was very, very dramatic, so that the European box office dropped 70%, the US box office even 80%. And this kind of goes together, and I'll keep it short for the year. I don't want to bore you with COVID, but China was the first one to come out and recover and had some decent box office numbers. In Europe, it was actually France. When France reopened as one of the first, within a couple of weeks, they were already back almost to the old numbers. Of course, then some other lockdowns happened and it was going up and down, and it's certainly not a straight line. But whenever cinemas opened in whatever country, there was a pretty hopeful development. I'm not going to run ahead of myself right now when I mention Maverick. Maverick will hit the $1 billion, I think, this week. I'm pretty sure about that. It hit 900 during this week. So those numbers are very promising, besides the fact that they are actually bringing older audiences to the theaters too. So all of the indicators that we have are actually quite positive, fortunately. So what happened? how did the market change? What were the cures or attempts of cures that they had? The box office basically collapsed by 80%, and that led to several things. For example, Warner Brothers putting all of their films out there in day and date release, meaning not the good old way of putting it in theaters first to creating awareness, hopefully hitting the box office jackpot, and then creating value for the other parts of the value chain. But of course, they tried to put that out in the movies if they were in the theaters, if they were even open, and then put everything else pretty much on their streamers. And we all know the incredible amount of streaming that probably all of us included were enjoying. That led to Netflix breaking at that year 200 million subscribers. We will also be aware of the current situation in Netflix with the stock price basically being cut in half and a lot of changes coming up there. But also, I don't really want to spread too much horror here. It's just the opposite. Even though Netflix has cut in half its stock price, even though they have lost 700,000 subscribers, of course, they blame a lot on Russia, which is true. Of course, those subscriptions are not valid anymore. But there's also very, very high numbers of others coming into the market, as you will see on the next slide. Nevertheless, even though the economic situation for Netflix seems to be a lot worse, and it certainly is in regards to the stock price, they will spend even more money on production this year. Also, of course, explained by the fact that competition is getting bigger and bigger. So, of course, you have to stand out and you will be able to attract further subscribers. High demand is what we have. Reduced production is what we had basically in the last year. But if you look at the amount of productions right now, and it's almost, I'm not quite sure about the precise numbers, but from my feeling and from a lot of industry contacts, I have the idea that actually the number of studios and or let me put it that way, getting studio space and time is almost harder in the UK now than in the US. Of course, it's partly due to companies like Disney and going into Pinewood and booking that for the next couple of years exclusively. But there's a bottleneck here, and there's a high demand for production, and there's a lot of productions going on here. So basically, the whole situation is not anywhere as dear as was anticipated, or as a lot of people out there that are not really looking at the market and the development are trying to tell you. There is growing demand for, of course, the good old qualities. Good script is still number one, but we will not be getting into that. We all know that, I think. We did have a high cost increase due to COVID-19 to the insurances, if you could even find one. Here also, the UK was actually pretty far ahead because already after about 1 year, they introduced a £500 million fund for insurance, and they were insuring productions. So that was quite, I must say, I was quite impressed by that. And that was, of course, well used up. Some people, of course, couldn't get insurance. And then, of course, some were willing to take or capable to take the risk. Fact, however, is that production, and especially also in the light of the problems of getting studio space, has become a whole lot more expensive. So what happened in the meantime? Just look at all these names that have come out there: Disney Plus, Apple, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, which coincidentally opened this week in the UK with a bang. Discovery, all of these came out, all of the new streamers. And if you look back just 2 years ago, streaming was basically Netflix and Amazon. If you look at the streamers right now, and that includes some of the very smallest ones that are on the internet and in all kinds of shapes, be it SVOD with a subscription video on demand, or AVOD, advertising oriented, and that is growing hugely, and you will understand later in a minute why. But there is so much out there. And even if you take a look at some of the smaller ones, there are about, literally, depending on how you define the size of a streamer, 2,500 streaming distributors, I would like to call them, out there, where you could put your movie on. So the 90-day theatrical window, of course, has died. That was already a development that started before COVID, but of course, COVID accelerated it greatly. And actually, right before COVID hit, I think it was Universal, don't take my word for it right now, but one of the major studios already had shrunk the window to 14 days for their releases in that year. It's kind of hopefully coming back now. I see a little light at the end of the tunnel. Also in Italy, Gabriele might be familiar with that. They have just introduced another rule. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they also insist on a 45-day theatrical window for theatrical films. It's actually a new law that came out a couple of weeks ago. So there will still be a theatrical window if things go back to normal or keep continuing to improve like they are. The window has definitely shrunk, and 45 days is, like, for example, in Italy and some places, or France, of course, which is very protective. If they can hold it up, it'll last. In the more free enterprise countries, the US and UK, I see that shrinking, especially in the US. I think it'll be anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks, more or less. Disney has, in the meantime, completed the acquisition of Century Fox. That also shows how everything is consolidating more and more. Remember how many studios we used to have? It has definitely reduced. Same thing, and that I always like to say that since we are talking about film finance generally and mainly in these presentations, when I started out, the accounting firms were called the Big Six. Now they are the Big Four. So everywhere we see a huge degree of consolidation, everything going into vertically integrated, huge corporations, which also makes it more and more important for everybody out there to know exactly your rights, your standing, and how to maneuver around there. Because I'm certainly not a communist at all. I'm probably, like some of my friends say, one of the more capitalistic people, but you have to be afraid and aware there, and don't trust any corporations. I sound like Che Guevara right now, but trust me, I look at it from both sides. But there's another thing, not trusting, also about the contracts, which Skylar Moore, you might know, one of the top attorneys in the business, just said the other day. He actually does advise not to sign any deal memos or memorandums of understanding. He says, if you want to put something in writing, put it right in the contract. Every contract can be simple. It's as easy as money in, money out, and obligations. And he's got a good point there. That is something that you should consider. I'm not giving you this as an advice, because I'm not giving legal advice, but if a man like Skylar Moore says that, it's definitely something to be kept in your mind. All right, Disney Plus, of course, brings some of the films out available in day and date. They will certainly also not change that. They had a huge success with one of the, I actually should know the title, but I'm too old to know all the cartoons. Anyway, I think it was was it the Sea Maid or something? Sorry about that, but they did have a huge release on streaming only, and since they did not have to spend any money on P&A, on prints and advertising, but they just released it out on the streaming platform, they saved all the money for advertising, for the prints and everything out there, and basically had a huge financial success, so big that they certainly are considering to make that a steady thing in their release strategies. HBO Max, of course, Warner, they did all the same back in that year. Amazon bought MGM. That was going back and forth. And important point to keep in mind right now, especially some say it was overpriced by $2 billion of course, we all know numbers is, numbers is a numbers game. You can pretty much say everything with that. But the thing which is more relevant in this case is that one of the main points for the purchase price was the estimated value of the MGM library of about $4.3 to $5 billion. And library basically means what? They have the copyright, they own the film. So that is all very important in this context, the library value. Why is something that we will also get into briefly when we will be talking a little more about the other side of the streamers. The number now that generally surprises people the most, and it certainly did surprise me when I heard that already 2 years ago by now, is the fact that Netflix was already then the most active studio with 124 feature films, which is, as you can read here, more than Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, Sony, Universal, and Paramount combined did shoot. If you hear that for the first time, I hope it's a shock for you, just like it was for me, because that really makes you think. And I like to kind of put some things out here that kind of break the pattern and kind of tell you that things can be different. We have a lot of beliefs out there that are so standard, and if you can shake them up and if you can get a different perspective, that is certainly something that can hopefully also motivate you to go ahead. And I've had a couple of projects coming out of these seminars, and that's always one of the things that I really like most. If I can kind of shake old beliefs and get people to do something. Excuse me. So what I put in briefly here is the slide that I just put in this morning. There are, of course, a few things we have to speak about. Those are the situations that we had pre-COVID, during COVID, and with the first kind of recovery. Since then, we had what I here call the Netflix crash. We briefly spoke about that in this context. This will also lead to a lot of changes out there internally at Netflix. What it has not changed is the way of how you can work with the streamers. And that's very, very limited. But I'm running ahead of myself right now, because right now we're just going to go briefly over the market. So there is a saturation of streamers out there, which will lead to the same situation that I mentioned with the studios right now, or the big six, or the accounting firms. There will be more and more consolidation. A lot of the, especially smaller streamers out there, will certainly not survive, but right now they are out there. What is probably more relevant, and one of the biggest changes, is the AVOD rush. It happens more and more, and even Netflix and Amazon will now be having certain departments where you can see advertised supported video on demand. Why does this happen? If you take a look at the market, you will see that there's only so many million of people you can sell your subscriptions to. But if you take a look at advertising and the incredible amount of money on corporate spending on advertising, there is so much more money available that can flow into the coffers of the streamers. On the other hand, of course, it takes the trouble away of the churn rate of subscriptions. A lot of people will not subscribe again or resubscribe. They will eventually cancel, especially in light of the economic situation right now. And if you look at it, we pretty much have the same situations that we had when cable was overtaking linear television back then. You pay for, in that case, it was channels and channel packages. Now it's the streamers, but you end up paying for 4 or 5. And you basically have pretty much the same expenses of $50 to $100 per month, I wish, per month, to get your TV out there. And you have a situation that is very similar to what it's been before, just with other market participants, but not necessarily much better for the consumer. So the consumers, of course, will be also going a lot to attend towards the AVOD, because, of course, that is for them free, and they can just use the the advertising and the commercial breaks for the good old standards of going to another room in the house, which I don't need to mention right now, or get some food or a drink in the meantime. So it's convenient, and it will definitely give quite a run for the money here. On the other hand, and that's the good part, saturation, because everybody wants to stay in business, changes out there. The demand is, like I said before, very, very high. And I included here the so-called hopefully existing maverick effect, looking at 900 million box office. And I would love to know if we're already at the billion, but I'm just, like I said, I'll be sure it'll be this week, $1 billion box office for a film. That is, of course, and that's something else to keep in mind, a sequel. So that leads to one of the other rules that I might even have to include in my first three that you saw on the first slide. Always be aware of the rights that you have and the rights that you give away. I have a couple of very ugly examples in that when we get to the film financing structures in detailed seminar, which also includes the development hell, where I'll be telling you a few horror stories. Like I mentioned before, I don't try to discourage you too much. On the other hand, I like to shake you up. And if you look at the development hell that movies like the second Max went through, or Don Quixote, that opened Cannes 3 years ago, that movie was in development for about 28 years till it was finally finished. Mad Max, Fury Road, the second one actually was when the rights reverted back to George Miller, the director, after about 15 years. He wanted to do it in the late 80s. It went into development and was already greenlit for quite some time. They finally, you know how these things can sometimes take decades, took about 13 years, and they were going to shoot in Iraq in 2003. Unfortunately, as we all know, a lot of other people were shooting in Iraq and nobody was shooting movies. So that led to another postponement. And movie finally took almost 13 years to get made. There's a couple of other examples of movies that go in turnaround, which basically means that a studio has greenlit them and then decides to abandon them and potentially have them ready for pickup by another studio that then reimburses them for the development, sometimes for interest, sometimes even a little profit. So there were movies, and especially if you're a writer, that might be a little bit consoling. E.T., for example, was abandoned by the studio. That wells over artistical differences because Spielberg wanted to make it, as he finally did, while Universal wanted it to be a whole lot darker. Home Alone, Forrest Gump even, and Bodyguard. Bodyguard took 20 years till it was made. It actually had before that, I keep forgetting. I think it was Diana Ross who was supposed to take Whitney Houston's part. And I'm not quite sure about the guy right now. I'll have to look that up. It's embarrassing. I should know. Sorry, but if you look at the story of Bodyguard, you'll be able to Google that easily. But all of these projects show you one thing: you can have the best material out there. It goes back to slide one. Nobody knows anything, and it can take forever till it gets made. And Forrest Gump in this case is included because Forrest Gump is also an example for one of the most interesting cases that ever went to trial. There's also Home Alone, which has a book about it. If you are really interested to go into detail, it is a thriller if you're interested in it. Otherwise, it might bore you to death. But there's a fantastic book by Pierce O'Donnell, who was the attorney in that case, who had the Coming to Africa case, which lasted also 13 years and finally ended with a settlement. But during the case, there was such a strong and in-depth discovery that you can really learn a lot about it. The book is, just like I said, 600 some pages, so you might think twice about it. But if you really want to go and even you don't know what else to read, I can certainly recommend it. So fact is out there, no matter what you have, there is demand. You can still make it, and there's a big chance and a lot of opportunity out there. and actually development financing, which is something that people generally like to shy away from, is actually kind of interesting for one simple reason. And it was a lot more interesting till about a week ago, till interest rates started to rise. But if you were looking at the interest rates, which were basically at zero or very, very low, or sometimes even negative, if you deposited money in the bank, sometimes they would even charge you for that for a little while. So development financing has a very, very interesting aspect for it. And so far as that, generally your investment is repaid with a 50% premium on top. So if you invest in development, and if it doesn't go into development hell for 20 years, but if it's the usual time frame of between best case scenario 18 months, which is extremely optimistic, but more or less 3 years, that will still yield you about 17 to 20%. The next advantage is that the development money will always be part of the budget and is generally repaid on the first day of principal photography. That means you get paid out of the budget, you get your profit out of the budget, and regardless of what happened to the film afterwards, you have already made your cut. So that is something that was certainly not interesting for a long, long time, but under the right context and circumstances, development can also be a pretty interesting aspect. And since a lot of the people that come here are writers or people that are not necessarily too connected to production companies, that might also be a very interesting first step to go to, because you can start development with a good 50,000 or 150,000. You could theoretically even start it with less, but then of course you will have to follow up and up. And rule of thumb is at least 50,000 for a smaller project, 150 for a bigger one. So where do we get our money from? We can get money in what many consider to be the optimum case, studio financing, from distributors, from banks and investors. The tendency out there is that basically everybody hopes and thinks it's the best to get fully financed by a studio or by a streamer, which is certainly not quite untrue, to put it nicely, and it certainly takes the most troublesome part of raising money out of it. However, you will be subjected to Hollywood accounting with all of its ups and downs, so you need to be very sure about the contracts that you'll be closing in. The other situation is the one, of course, with the streamers. And there are two things that you need to keep in mind. The streamers will, first of all, only work together with people with whom they already have a working relationship. So I constantly hear somebody, well, I have a good idea and I want to sell it to Netflix. That's leaving out about 90 steps, and that's also leaving out some impossibilities. Of course, nothing is impossible, but in this case, it's actually pretty much true, because you will always have to have somebody who has a working relationship with Netflix, and generally, or the other streamers, the big ones. Generally, the better option is to find a production company that has worked with them. That, of course, is something you can easily research by, for example, checking the credits of the Netflix movies and your IMDb page. So you'll have to do a little research for that. If you can approach those and you will share with them, you're generally a whole lot better off with getting 50% of that than getting 100% of nothing. So, yeah, I'm a mathematician at heart. Yeah. Anyway, you will need somebody like that, and they are, which has also another advantage, are generally then able, when it comes to the development, to attach talent. And you will always need a director and a star or a name attached. So you will save yourself a whole lot of trouble. You will then get paid for it, and that of course depends on a lot of imponderabilities and contracts in this case. But there are two things to be kept in mind, and the most important thing is, when you sell, they take all the rights. You have no sequel rights. If you take any of the characters out there to the development, it will not be possible. And worst of all, in the first instance, you have no copyright. So you have sold out. So you got to make sure, which is another rule of thumb that I keep reiterating, to grab as much money as you can in the first instance and don't count on ever getting anything later on. We will be talking about the accounting much more in detail. And if you have a strong position like Spielberg, Cameron, even Schwarzenegger today, Brad Pitt, and then it's different. But everybody else there will not ever get any other money because they do not have the strength to negotiate gross profits. And also those will have to be very well defined, as you will be seeing in the in-depth presentations that you're getting. So you can get all of that money out there. And if you work with the studios, you have to be aware that you will be subject to studio accounting. You will have to know where that leads to. If you sell to the streamers, you basically have to be aware of the fact that you more or less get paid and treated like a service provider. There's two ways to go about it. The first one is actually that the streamer says, okay, we're going to fully finance that. The other case that happens more and more frequently, and if you're not that strong or your partners are not that strong, also happens, is that the streamer says, okay, we're willing to pick up the movie, but you will have to finance it first. Of course, if you have a guarantee that Netflix, Amazon, Paramount Plus, whoever picks it up, that's a bankable contract, and you will find a bank in the business. And there's another one actually that has just come up during Cannes right now with two fantastic ladies who are leading it. And they will finance that. They will cash flow it, but of course you'll have to finance it first and then wait till you get paid again. Also, you'll have to keep in mind what most people don't know or don't mention, that if your movie gets picked up, it generally gets paid over 3 years, which also might lead to some confusion in the cash flow or repayment of the investors. So all of these things are details that you will need to know, but that generally nobody tells you, unless of course you have a fantastic attorney out there. But if you can already kind of preempt all of that, you're a major step ahead. So basically, to reduce it all is take the money and run, or better, take the money, produce and run. If you make anything on top of that, hey, fine, but don't expect too much in the beginning, and be happy if you get that far. Sorry, I don't mean to, sometimes I like to spread the optimism and then I throw out the horror, so I haven't quite made up my mind. But it just shows you and gives you the range of perspectives that are out there. Fact is, it must be a good business for some reason, because if you think and look back, there's only two companies or two sets of companies that have been in business for 100 years. It's basically cars and film. So there is hope out there. All right, so we'll be looking at other sources of financing like co-productions. There are a couple of deals out there. Co-productions always might sometimes mean that you have access to tax incentives from two countries. There are pre-sales, or there were pre-sales, and there might be some, but it's very, very rare. In the good old days, and especially in markets like AFM, American Film Market, or Cannes, if you had a good project, you could pre-sale it to certain territories and basically get your film financed if you had the right names. Then a few tax incentives and German media funds, for example. That was beautiful, nice and easy, and a little patchwork, but that is almost gone. Fortunately, it's coming back again. A couple of weeks ago, when I gave this presentations, I tended to almost say this is dead. And as you might have seen on the post, I said, is classical financing dead? Fortunately, it is not. And it looks like it's coming back. A couple of weeks ago, it looked like it might be as good as dead. But there's still, it's not a flat line yet. It's still breathing. And it looks to be actually coming back. So you will still have to be aware of that. Funny thing is, if you go to other film financing seminars, you still hear the stories from 10, 15 years ago. The market has changed. As you have just seen right now, there's been major changes, more changes than ever in the last, well, basically, I can easily say 2 decades, and I can guess what happened before, so I can say 3 decades. There are split right deals. We will be getting into those briefly, and we will be getting into the kinds of gap and super gap financing, which basically means if you have 80% of your money together, you can get the gap and financing, which are banks that are handling it. There used to be the so-called super gap. That's why I put it in brackets here, that went up to 30%. In the, well, golden days not too long ago, but with the changes right now, I would not bet on it. But 10 to 15% gap is always achievable. 20 is pretty much another acceptable ballpark number here. Where else can we get money? We can certainly get money, and a lot of money, from product placement, and it's certainly no coincidence that I put the James Bond car right in there. The amount of product placement and of money that is being poured into the production by corporations for advertising is actually higher than most budgets these days. Also has the added benefit that, of course, they will advertise their products, but they will advertise it in connection with the film. So there's a lot of real synergies. I love the word synergies. I love what they stand for, but it's one of the most abused and overused words. So I'm really happy when I see one working out, and that is certainly one of those examples here. You can get money for your production from service deals, basically saying you will integrate, for example, a CGI company that will then, against either parts of the profits, generally they are pretty advanced by now, so they will also be asking for parts of the copyright. Some of that they will then, for example, do the work in post-production. Deferrals, which basically means that some people are accepting to get paid less, and hopefully when the movie makes some money or some money comes in, to be paid then. There's another source, and that of course depends on the product. Soundtracks, they can be absolutely fantastic, like Bodyguard, one of the best examples for that, of course, or Absolutely Famous. Absolutely Famous is actually another good example, because I'll just throw this in as a side note. Just the licensing fees they had to pay for using all of those fantastic tunes was more than $3 million. So if you have your own soundtrack and your own publishing house, or label, that sounds like a good idea, but trust me, it's not a good idea unless you are already in the business. I know a lot of people in the music business, and actually a very good former friend of mine was the managing director for Universal Europe, and making or having your own label, running all of that, putting that together is like making another independent movie on the side. Do not try to get into that. Find a good, reliable partner, library, or composers. We do have some fine composers on the film portal too. George Callis, who did something for me, is actually working big for business now, for Disney, over 10 years. They have developed like crazy, and that is actually, like the writers are sometimes considered to be the weakest link in the business, not because they are not important, but just because they don't have the standing, even though they might be the most important part of it. The musicians and the composers are also in a very, very weak position, but there's incredible material out there. However, get somebody out there in the business who can service you with it. Do not start your own label unless it's something you always wanted to do and you have the capacity, but I can certainly not recommend it, and it comes from reputable sources who know a whole lot more than I do. All right, and another segment where we will go in over the grants, fellowships, and labs. I mentioned that already in the introduction when I showed you the 6 topics. So we will be identifying all of the locations, especially in the US. All 50 states do that. Most of the countries in the world do that at this time. There's an incredible influx now for all kinds of minorities. If you can qualify for anything, you have a very good chance if you do some research, plus of course with some of the material we will be supplying, that you find access to some money under those special conditions. It's actually so much that, and I know we have a very, very colorful and wide-reaching crowd here, so I hope I can say that. But I'm about to get probably grants too, because as a middle-aged white man, I'm turning into quite a minority here. So I'm pretty hopeful that I might be making something soon. But regardless of that, all jokes aside, there's a lot of money out there. And also, which is very interesting here, from certain institutions, special interest. I mentioned the Army here in first place, simply for two reasons. First of all, Maverick is current. Second of all, the Army has a fantastic liaison officer who takes care of that. Of course, it requires script approval. If your movie is too much anti-military, of course, they will shy back from supporting you. But if it's anywhere along their lines, you can get an incredible amount of support, of manpower, of course, material out there. Same goes surprisingly for science, NASA, for example, for math. I don't know whether Bruce, whether you've ever met Edward Frankel, a friend of mine, mathematician, doctor in Stanford. Now, okay, because he also wasn't. He actually gave a presentation in Cannes when I was there right now too. Brilliant guy. So there's a lot of special interests here, also from corporations and from certain donations and from certain foundations to support all kinds of ideas. And if you can, I'm not going to say tweak your script, but if you have a subplot, for example, that refers to that, or if you bring any kind of affinity to that in there, you will be surprised how much money you can get and for what you can get money. There's one example, for example, yeah, good, but excuse me, I gotta go to bed soon. Anyway, but there's another example here. And the General Motors GM of the 60s here is giving away several millions every year in his foundation. And in one of these awards, a lady that went to Sundance was awarded £15,000 to basically just find somebody who would give her advice on what birds are located in what area, because she wanted to make the movie so precise that even there was, I don't know, there was like a river or something separating it and different birds were coming in. And there was money that she could get out there. It was just 15,000, but on a student film, that of course increased the production value greatly and added authenticity. Plus, it makes a different and interesting topic for the marketing. So plus £50,000 or dollars is still $15,000. So there are the most incredibly, I'm not going to say twisted minds, but weird ways of thinking around it and finding some kind of relevance where you can access a lot of money. And there's so many foundations out there, some of them very, very good and generous. It goes over the whole range, starts sometimes with $500 for writing and goes up via $60,000 plus the services of an accomplished DOP that one of the camera producers, for example, offers, up to $400,000. So there is a lot out there, but it's not as easy as just going there and putting in 2 pages. The approach is very important. The application process can take anything from, it's never weeks, it's always a month, up to a year or two. And the documentation can take up to 100 pages. Apologies, but unfortunately, this is not sponsored by Coke Zero, but I'm back. Right. So we will be going over all of that in detail. And I'm actually happy to tell you that one of the ladies from India who attended one of these seminars has actually now been able to secure £25,000. So It is hard. It has to be extremely precise because, as you can imagine, they get so many applications. If you don't follow the form 100%, you're out. You can basically have the idea for the next Star Wars. Nobody will be looking at that. The process is very, very streamlined. So it's important that you definitely follow up on all the rules. Another, and probably one of the most important sources and also most interesting ones, are the tax incentives and credits, which basically means that some location is willing to give you money for shooting there because they expect an economic benefit for that. And they generally do get it. First of all, it comes in employment of local crews. It comes to a great degree for some places in regards to tourism, and it's just an economic contribution. The numbers are, of course, like anywhere when you work with numbers, between an economic effect of up to 150 to 200% of the local spending. So that explains why a lot of countries and territories are now giving these tax incentives or credits. If you look at films, there's like two things that always people who or that I always find is interesting to even people outside of the business. Once you tell them a little bit about product placement, they will start watching the movies differently when you tell them, oh, look, they don't hold it like this, but the logo is clearly to be seen in there. So that's one of the things. The other one is that people will now start watching films once you tell them. Everybody's generally going either on a journey or on a trip or a family visit or whatever. If you then check the location they are going to, be it Amsterdam, be it Georgia, a lot of times, it is always a location that offers tax credits. So it's really easy to put that in there and access tax credits in another location. If you look at it now, from now on, you will always see when you watch a movie, somebody's going somewhere. You might not even have to look it up because the maps that I'll show you will document that. But there's constant the access to tax incentives and tax credits, of course, also due to a lot of rules and regulations. But as you can see, couple of decades ago, it was basically all shot in Los Angeles and a little bit in New York. And at the end of the 90s, Canada started becoming very interesting because not only because of the tax credits they were offering, but also because the Canadian dollar is generally, or was generally, about 20% lower than the US dollar. So that, of course, led to a lot of runaway production. And over the years, it led to this almost ridiculous situation, as you see here, that even the rocks earthquake hit San Andreas was not shot near the San Andreas fault, but it was shot in Australia. And the movies, the major movies and the release, that was, for example, here in the year 2015, it has not been varying greatly, but basically it led to the fact that 15 major studio films were shot in California, the same amount in Canada, and that was right after the hurricane, 18 in Louisiana. So the runaway production is definitely something to be kept in mind. For the UK people here right now, it's 20%. Actually, they say 25%, but 25% only applies to 80% of your production cost. So it is effectively 20%. Shows you also how important it is to look at the numbers and what they mean and the rules behind it. Here are two maps to document my point that I made, that you have basically access to money everywhere. In the US, you can see it, all the colorful ones are states that give you anywhere between 5 and 40%. In Europe, you will see all of the blue ones that are also giving you anywhere between 15 and now there's an exception, so the number is a little high. Don't take it as relevant for everything. But the Canary Islands give you a tax credit of 50%. And they have a fantastic climate. I'm not too sure about the cruise, but apparently they are a whole lot better by now. But still, Spain definitely has a fantastic film industry. If you ship them over to the Canary Islands, which is not too expensive, that is definitely something that's worth looking at. Greece is also very, very big, up to 40%. Italy has just raised everything a couple of weeks ago too. They have a very, very interesting tax situation too. And a dear friend of mine is also a very reputable attorney there, who I can gladly refer you to if that should ever be relevant. I don't know, Bruce, if you ever met Christian Colloway at one of my events in Cannes.
You might have been there. I met so many people.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, so you see all of the dark blue ones or all the colorful ones in the USA are giving away, well, let me put this a little casual right now, free money. So if we add all of the potential sources up here in their range, and of course, perfect is equity. If you get equity financing, which of course is the hardest pretty much, but if you get that anywhere between 0 to 100%, that is the best you can get. Tax credits will be accounting for between 20 and 40%, gap financing between 10 and 30, co-productions and or pre-sales can bring anywhere between 20 or 70% of your budget. Grants can bring an easy 5 to 10%. And if you're not James Bond, in-kind, product placement and deferrals, an easy 5 to 10%, which basically means if we add all of this up, you can always get at least 60% money elsewhere, which means with 40% equity and 60%, you have your firm financed, or of course, best case scenario, I just did that for the purpose of showing the numbers here, 260%. So that shows you the range and the different opportunities to do what we basically have to do with independent financing, the patchwork. But it shows you here a lot of ways and a lot of access that is there, more than a lot of people would have thought in the first place. More details about that, of course, in the seminar. Distribution here, sales agents and producer representatives. Producer representatives is for a good reason in the last place. 9 out of 10 times, I will have to recommend you not to utilize them, because most of them are even charge money up front. Don't ever pay money up front. Unless, not even unless, but if somebody is very reputable and can document success over that time, it's definitely something to be considered. But if you distribute your film, you will have to pay the producer's representative, you will have to pay the sales agent and the distribution. It adds another layer, and it generally is a layer that takes money up front. They will always tell you your project is fantastic, but they need a little money for the expenses. They will take it, and in 99% of the cases, nothing will ever come out of it. Also, like I mentioned before, several of the rules that you should always obey. Generally, never pay in advance. All right. So we'll be talking then about when and how to approach, especially the distributors and the sales agents, how soon, or also in regards to the markets. Most important, of course, being when we start at the beginning of the year, Berlin, then Cannes, then Toronto, Sundance, of course, when it takes place, and I think it will take place again, and the American film market. So rule of thumb right now, we will have Venice in September. There's not that much going on, so you should probably be preparing for the American film market in the first week of November. We will be looking at the expenses, because they will be charging you for the expenses. And if you don't put any caps on that, you will come into situations like even Michael Moore, who is still in court with Harvey Weinstein, because Harvey decided it was appropriate to take a private jet and charge it to the expenses. So if you don't anticipate that, if you don't have clear-cut contracts in place, you will be in for a number of very, very lovely surprises. The next one is sub-licensing, which is also very interesting. If you license your film out for some, generally a term between 3 and 7 years, let's say 7 years, and your distributor knows that the license expires in a couple of months, he will sub-license it as long as possible, because he will never make any money after the 7 years anyway. So if you find somebody to sub-license your movie to for another 15 years, you will get your movie for that territory back after 22 years, which basically, unless you've shot Casablanca, will mean you get nothing. So it's also very important to take a look at these contractual points like the sub-licensing, the end of terms, and like what happened to a friend of mine, he found his movie on YouTube interrupted by 22 commercials. So that was a little bit of my horror spreading again. So let's see if we find something optimistic. Oh no, holy counting. Not that much optimism in there. But as we all know, there's an incredible amount of money that can be made if you are in the right position. So in order to know that, we will go a little bit into the history, just very briefly. We will come to one of the most important points, the difference of net profits versus gross profits. Net profits, as Eddie Murphy called them, are monkey points, because you have to laugh like a monkey when they give you the profit statement. I have a very somehow sad example here from almost a neighbor of mine, David Prowse. He died last year, pretty much down the block here where I am right now. He was, of course, Darth Vader in Star Wars, and he was supposed to get 5% of the net profits. He kept getting the profit statements always with zero. That Star Wars is still in the red after all of these years. There's a few other examples, and that's actually talking about spreading the horror. I'll be doing that pretty well during that presentation. But it also reinforces to watch out what you need to know. So like I said, one of the most important points, net profits versus gross profits, and even those have to be clearly defined and will be. The second one, and probably even the most important one, is the waterfall. Waterfall basically meaning all the money that comes in, that the film generates, all that money comes in and is distributed like water falling, and then goes to distributors, to the exhibitors, to gross profit participants. And how that water falls down is definitely the most important thing you will need to know if you're expecting to see anything beyond the first money that you're making. Again, let me repeat, take the money and run, make as much as you can up front, and then take it from there. But still, you have to be aware of what's waiting for you and what's potentially waiting. And nothing is more annoying than having a movie like, for example, Great Big Fat Greek Wedding. No, I'm sorry, I never get the title straight. My Big Wedding, the Greek Wedding, sorry about that. Which made about 50 times its budget and is still in the red. And you know who the co-producers were who are actually in court about that too? Yeah, Maggie, want to tell us?
Well, Tom Hanks
Yeah,
and his wife, Rita Wilson.
and Rita Williams, perfect, yeah. Most people don't know that, cool, very good, yeah. So yeah, it's incredible what's going on out there. And like I said before, if you're interested in it, it's a thriller. Otherwise, it might bore you to death or scare you to death, but you have to know it. We'll be talking about the break evens, because break even theoretically means, okay, all the costs have been basically recovered. However, as you will see there's so many definitions, and that's another important part, because that's all contractual. So we will look at contractual accounting, and we will also look at tax accounting, because there's the first hypocritical situation, actually, because especially as a company, on one hand, for your balance sheet and for your stock price, you want to make as much profits as you can to be very good looking and solid out there. For the purpose of not paying taxes, you want to look as bad as you can. And for the purpose of not giving any profits to profit participants, you want to look bad too. all of these three ways are legal. Even though the IRS considered it not to be illegal, the IRS took Hollywood to court. And we all know you don't want to fight with the tax authorities. Don't mess with Texas or Texas, whatever it is. But the IRS did not win that case. So it's all legal. It's all, and that's contractual contracting here. It's all in there. But if you don't know how to read it, you'll be surprised, and never in a good way. All right, so we'll be talking about profitability of movies, and we will bring another interesting factor, pun intended, in interest. There's a very, very ugly example here, Goodfellas. I think we all know and love that movie, or at least we know it. And the budget was about $30 million, but interest gets accrued every year. The movie's been out for almost, I think it had just had 30th anniversary. It was out for 30 years. So even though the budget was only 30 million, the interest accrued over outstanding money is already at $32 million. So there will never be a profit on that film because it just keeps running and the interest is being accrued. That's another very, very scary point. And if you don't know that, because especially if you work with a studio, for example, if they finance your film, they'll be charging interest from day one on the money they lay out there. And even if they have it in the account and just hold it there as a line of credit, you'll be paying for that. The last thing in that case is allocation, where we have a very, very fine example of how a film that would basically be worth about $10 million in TV rights only gets paid $500,000 in TV rights. How does that happen? It's easy. The studio just put another 95 bad films into a package and gave the whole package away for the price, and then divided, because your film wasn't properly allocated, just divide it by 100. So instead of 50 million for 5 films and 10 million for yours, they had 100 films, divided that, and the people in question ended up with $500,000 instead of 10. So all of that will be things that we'll be looking at in detail here. And we have 2 examples here, one by Stephen Follows, very good, about a film, 30 million feature film with more than twice the money made at the box office. And we will be showing and going through how the investor's profit of a film that already made twice as much money as the budget at the box office ends up with a profit for the investors of less than 2 million and for the producers of less. So that's a total profit of about 4 million. Because let's not forget, the waterfall soaks up all of the water going down, or a lot of it. And if you have certain parameters here, as you can see in the Warner Brothers statement that we'll be going through, you will never, ever see any money. While on the other hand, the studios have already made their money because Warner Brothers Distribution has already charged them about $300 million. So the profit is already there, and it's just in another entity, but that's not the entity that you're working with or that your film is in. So definitely a few very, very surprising little numbers that we'll be going into here. That takes quite some time, so I'm just putting that out here. You can also look it up, and I will give you the material for those who participate in everything, no doubt about that. But that's definitely also 2 points of interest for you if you want to follow up on your own. So I'll be showing you how the 10 movies, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars, and made $7 billion at the box office and 0 cents of net profit. It might sound crazy, but once you follow up on how that works and how it's potentially done, nothing would surprise you anymore. Here's another one, the Stephen Follows slide again. Here's a little better look, and I'll just briefly like to draw your attention. You see in the right column the added up money, and you see a number there, total defined gross of $612 million. And you will see that the distribution fee here is already $211 million. That means that Warner Brothers has already made $200 million in one of their corporations, but of course, $200 million less that are being distributed here. We don't have the time right now to go through all of this in detail, but it basically leads to the fact that at this stage, the film is still $167 million in the red, even though the defined gross was at $600 million. You cannot guess those numbers. If I put it all in, and especially if I talk to anybody who's an accountant, works for the big six or big four, the big four accounting firms, a banker, nobody will believe this until you go through step by step here. And you see that it's all legal. So what can we learn from this? Among the first rules that I gave you in the beginning, there's one thing, and I have not quite done the whole presentation on that, but I'm planning to do a presentation called Reverse Engineer Your Movie. Basically, to look at what genre makes money. We all know horror is cheap to produce, has quite some chances for making money, so you might want to go into that. You will have to work with a decent budget. You will have to get the right cast out there, and you have to construct the story in a way that you can access grants that you might not have seen before, that you can access locations and get tax credits that you might not have been able to access before. So there are even some top-up tax incentives. For example, in Canada, if you shoot in locations that are totally remote, you get an extra 5 or 10%, which of course lends itself in the genre of a horror movie, for example. If you play around with that, I'm not trying to minimize the hard artistic work of writing and writing from your heart. But if you have either a little flexibility or totally money oriented, you will be surprised how many ways of tweaking your script are out there that can make it easier for you. And of course, every little access to money that you get, those people work with other people too. So it broadens your network and your connections. You know, that's another thing why I run the film portal, because connections and networking is so important. And most people really don't do enough of that. So it all starts with you. And the funny thing, well, funny, I might choose it too. I might have to choose my words a little more carefully, but it's actually not funny. The surprising thing is, and I've seen it in Canada now too, again, I see it everywhere, and I see it especially when I ask people directly, people do not read the trades. You have to read the Hollywood Reporter and maybe Variety at least. Deadline also, you know, there's a couple of good publications out there. And even if you don't subscribe to them and go behind the paywall, just the regular ones out there are already very informative. You have to take at least, I would say, 10 to 50 minutes every day to read the trades, to see what's going on, to see the tendencies out there, the trends. Most people never ever read that, and I'm surprised. I have a bunch of established filmmakers or other people that approach me for whatever kind of consulting is out there, good people, and if you ask them about current development, they know pretty much nothing. You know, we all watch the news, 24-hour news, and the 24-hour news basically have material for about 15 minutes if you condense it, you know, so cut down on that and read the trades. Protect your work should be self-explanatory. Of course, we can't protect ideas, but we can protect our scripts. We can do all of that. And we have to be aware of what rights we have and what rights we have to give up. If you sell your work, you know, sequel rights, character that you take out of there, all of that. Very, very important to be aware of that and to know it. Get access to the industry. And that's what I said right now before I switched to this slide. People don't network well enough, you know, and I see it on the film portal. I have a bunch of good people out there, but very few have a strong profile or a strong social media presence. And what happens when you approach somebody, when you do a cold call, or when you meet somebody somewhere, or when you sign up, somebody's looking at your profiles. If you have an interesting profile that tells something about you, that might make it possible to have somebody either call you back, mail you back, talk to you, or maybe be very interested in that. But if you just have your name, with all respect to the beautiful names we have out here, nobody's going to get back to you. You have to motivate the people, and everybody, Google me. You've heard that for 20 years, or IMDb me. IMDb is actually, I find it very interesting too, that a lot of people are not really that much into the IMDb, and it is helpful, but it's unfortunately not that well kept. And funnily enough, IMDb, as most people don't know, is in Bristol. They're pretty secretive about the headquarters. It's one of the most important companies in Hollywood in a way, and they are in Bristol in the UK. Pretty nondescript. I actually met Cole Needham is the guy who opened it 2 weeks ago, because he also sponsors one of those short script contests as a logo. He's a very nondescript, very friendly and everything. And it's definitely one of the names out there, and you would never suspect it. And they are a little secretive about it. You might know that Amazon bought them about 17 years ago or something, but he's still the CEO and handling it. So definitely take care of your social media profile. Especially I find, and that's just me, I'm not sure, but I find LinkedIn getting better and better. A lot of people are complaining about the development there, but if you use it, target it, I'm pretty happy with it right now, but that's just me. So the more you have, the better it is anyway. And what you don't need, unless you want to be an influencer, of course, is TikTok. But that's up to you. Fact is, the more you're out there, the more interesting you can be to potential partners or contacts, and the more you network. And of course, it makes sense. I've also come to a point where I didn't go to a lot of network meetings, because 9 out of 10 is just people who are trying to get your business card, and never ask, what can I do for you? They always ask, what can you do for me? So it's got to be a given and taken. And that also comes when it comes to social media. If you're out there and if you help others all of the time, wherever you can, contribute. If you find a question and you have a tip, put it out there. Eventually the community will see you as somebody who helps. Bruce is like the best example for that. Bruce, I love you. I gotta say, the things you put out there, and really great. And I think I read everything, and every once in a while you come out there and surprise me with something I've never seen. Really respect, gotta say that. Time we'll have a drink again. Yeah, but it really, for everybody else out there too, if you just come out there as somebody who has knowledge, who supports people, who's willing to give, it'll come back. I'm not going to get religious here or spiritual or anything, even though I am, but it's working, trust me. Generally, another thing, if somebody says, trust me, run as fast as you can. But in this case, it does work. Be a giver out there, it comes back and it helps you. The next thing, of course, I said that at slide 1, my 3 takeaways: attorney, attorney, attorney. Whatever you want to sign, whatever you want to have somebody sign, whatever you have to sign, ask an attorney. And make sure it's a respected and reputable attorney. And if you prepare him, and if you know what to look for, what to ask for, or to point him into a certain directions, it'll save you a lot of money. We all know, even if you have a cheap one, it'll be $250 per hour, but it's more like $500 per hour. So if you know this, if you take your notes, you already save about 2 hours of explaining probably. So there's $1,000 right now. Don't thank me. Okay. So know your rights, be sure of what you have, understand and align you and your investors and partners' interests. If you really find something of the classical win-win situation here, be very happy, but also be aware of some that might not be willing to align their interests with yours. So you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what you're working. And you have to know, and again, we go to my first slide, what's your motivation? You want to know what the other side of the table wants. All right, and the last one, like Tony Robbins would say, work with what you got, start now. All right, Thank you very much. Give me a second for rescue my voice. Unmute yourselves if you like, and then we'll do the Q&A. Thank you. All right. So, no questions?
Can I have a question from?
No,
Mexico?
sorry. No, of course. Yeah, sorry, mate.
Okay, and well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Some of them I already check, and IMDb is quite, you know, nice people there, so that's very nice. And one thing is, I realized that if I want to be more producing things, much easier to get. For example, I'm a Japanese, so I have a lot of disadvantage, but at the same time advantage, because no British film producer tried to combine some, you know, Japanese filmmaker to make a big film here. And fortunately, I quite a lot of translation for quite established Japanese film directors, especially he's quite good in Cannes Film Festival this year too. And then I have a very nice script, but one is quite established producer is wrote a rough story about
Japanese
samurai.
producer, if I may ask, right?
No, it's not.
Okay. Yeah.
Very interesting point. And he says he wanted to do, together with that famous Japanese director, and make a samurai movie in Japan. Such a case, it's quite complicated to get a finance, or if we have more, you know, international way, because he really wanted to be very authentic Japanese samurai movie. So that he wanted to location should be Japan and the casting should be Japanese. So is that very difficult? But
yes, well, it really depends if I hope I got that right now. But basically, Maggie, I see your hand, you'll be next, sorry. But the thing is, if I get that right, it's a Japanese British co-production that you're looking for, and you're looking for a British producer to join in there.
Yeah. And British.
Yeah. I have a very similar problem with a fantastic story out of India with actually one of the ladies who went to one of the last seminars. She's got Indian financing, she's got access, and she utilized a lot of these things, and she has a very hard time to find a British co-producer. And it seems to be, especially with the way things are right now, that there's so much businessy and so much to do that they kind of shy back because it might complicate things. So you will really have to find somebody who has some kind of affinity, relationship, personal interest. That would be the first step, I think. But it's just a semi-educated guess. But I can tell you it's I have a very, very same problem right now here. And we just met in Cannes again. And I can only say so much that it's a fantastic historical project. The budget is small. It hits all the right boxes, but it's not easy. I'm not saying it can't be done.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
But you just gotta keep trying.
Yeah. But the good thing is that's draft script come from you know, quite you know, everybody knows the name of the producer, so that's one thing's very good. And he needs me because he needs a good Japanese director.
Oh yeah,
so that's maybe I want to help Japanese side, and he do that in the British or international, but he's not British, but he lives this country, so that's maybe I want to be always positive. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
good luck with it, and keep me posted, and feel free to send me an email or something. Maybe we can follow up.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
great.
Yes.
I saw Maggie was the next one, and then Marina raised her hand too. So Maggie, please.
Well, hi, and thank you. It's been really informative. My problem is that I had a heck of a time navigating my way here. So I missed from 10 to 10:30. Did you record this, and can I get a copy of it, or?
I'll make it accessible. Yes, yes to both.
Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you very much. Well, so I'll find out what I missed in that. You're actually, this is kind of like to pique our interest in taking your seminar. Is that correct?
That's both, because I give away quite a lot of information here. I hope, I think. And it's just that the seminar is so deep and has so much information, and I just can't speak 10 hours in one piece.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay, so we'll find out on your LinkedIn page or somewhere how much that seminar is. Is that correct?
Yeah, the seminar is generally £199 for 6 sessions.
Okay, very good. And then I just want to give a brief pitch about the movie we're doing. It's set in LA and Ireland, and it's we have Irish producers, which is great because they have a relationship with Screen Ireland, the Irish governmental agency I'm sure you're familiar with. But they are not participating in raising funds or anything. So so I'm on my own there. So excuse me, I'm definitely looking for investors. And the Irish producers even mentioned, maybe look for an American production company to co-produce with us, which I think would alleviate some of the problem they're thinking of, which is raising some of the money and all of that. So I just want to, see if you can give me some hope that you'll help us out with answers to these perplexing questions in the seminar, or if you have anything to lay on me now, that'd be great too.
Yeah, well, I would have to know a little more about the project and how it qualifies, but basically, if it has an international appeal and you find an American company, it's possible. Nothing's easy right now, and but it's too hard to say. But we can talk about that too. If you want to send me like something small, like I don't know, whatever you feel is appropriate at this stage, I can certainly give you some input or some ideas.
Sure, I can give you a pitch deck if you like, and
sure, if you feel it's appropriate to send it out right now. Yeah, you do have my email address, don't you?
Nope, but I'm gonna.
It's for everybody, of course. It's roy@thefilmportal.com. I can also put it in the chat if I find it. Not the mail address, I know it in the chat.
Okay. Okay, that would be great. I'd so appreciate that. And
I'm not promising anything yet, because I always keep what I promise. That's why I never promise anything. But
I didn't expect you to promise a thing, but that's very nice of you to welcome the pitch deck. I'd so appreciate that. And then I've got to jump off right now, but gosh, I'm so excited to join the next leg of your
great. I'll send all the material out over the weekend, because we'll be switching a few sites, but I'll send you, and then we'll take it from there, Maggie. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I hope I can connect with all of you on LinkedIn. I'm Maggie Egan Cummings. That's if you want to reach out to me as well. Thank you so much, everybody.
Great. You're doing what I just said. You're networking like crazy. Not bad. All right.
I was up. Oh, I can't even tell you, but yes, thank you.
See you soon, Maggie. We got to go to Marina now briefly. If you want to stay as long as you feel, please do. But we're taking Marina right now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you, Roy. This was incredibly helpful. By the way, I was wondering, did you run the New York Mayor's Office of Entertainment Finance Lab a couple of years ago in New York?
No.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately not.
Oh,
I
okay.
still have a picture of me in City Hall, but that dates back to 1997.
I see. Yeah, but anyway, I'm in New York City, and my project is it's a film. It's an edgy drama / thriller. I guess my question is, well, two questions to be exact.
Sure.
I was wondering, what is the budget level that's most attractive to investors? Let's say we are trying to finance it mostly through equity. And in its first incarnation, it was like 1 million budget. This is kind of relatively cheap, mostly actor-driven film that I also intend to direct myself. And now I have some new producers on board, and they're suggesting much smaller budget, like 150K. But I'm kind of getting more involved in, financing at this point. So I was wondering whether it's too small a budget to really be, interesting to serious investors or companies.
Cool. That's a hard question. Basically, the less they invest, the less they can lose.
Right. Yeah.
That's like one way of looking at it. The other point, of course, is you got to have a certain production value, and your film can't look cheap, even though if you make it for a little money. So third hand, I only have two. I don't know where the third one's come from, but anyway, technology-wise, it's so incredible right now what you can do, and how much you can, or how good your film can look. Funny thing actually now is, see my mobile here? That's the Samsung. You know what that thing shoots?
Like 4K?
8K.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So that's another little pointer. So the range is incredible. The thing is, first of all, you will have to figure out how much does the script require. Minimum. So you will have an idea about that. That's the minimum. Then, of course, if you can make it for a little money, it might be very interesting. On the other hand, if you want to sell it, like, let's say, like we said before, the streamer's case, you're probably better off in a $3 million range, 3 to 5 maybe. I think for 150K, unless it's maybe a horror film in a cabin or something, it's probably production value wise very little. But I may be wrong. You might have the most genius DOP out there, or some magician with a light.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Although
what you need definitely would be a line producer.
Right.
Who reads the script, he can tell you what that's going to cost you a little money, but that will give you a better idea. On the other hand, easier rule of thumb is the more the better. If you have an investor who's willing to splash out, take all the money you can get.
Yeah.
So it's hard enough to raise any kind of money.
Right. There are also some companies that serve as, I guess, intermediaries. I don't know if you're familiar with Buffalo 8.
Of course, yeah.
What do you think about this company?
Actually, they did a couple of good movies. They have know-how. I've heard really not much bad about them, come to think about it, but I would be, to give you a qualified opinion, I would have to look a little bit more into that. But basically, I would rather say good than bad at this stage.
I see. Okay. Good.
And I've seen some of their work, and I've seen some of their presentations and some of the stuff they're doing. It does make sense. It actually, my first impression, I'm just being very careful here, not that you blame me for it later on, but I actually have a pretty good impression.
I see. Okay.
It's definitely worth following up and doing some due diligence on that. Definitely that. It's not like there's some companies out there where I would say, hey, don't even bother looking, don't even go to their website, too much wasted energy. But they are definitely a company that's worth looking at.
Can I add? Can I just throw something in?
Please, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I wanted to ask one more quick question, if that's okay.
Marina, if you don't mind, I'm pretty sure Bruce just wanted to reply to your question.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
Probably actually be helpful for you.
Yeah, Bruce, yeah, I would love to hear.
I just wanted to say that I met Matthew Helderman in Buffalo 8, as well as Luke, I forgot his last name, but definitely are well entrenched in the industry, and they have lots of connections. And I've seen them work with, middle to high end talent level, but also company level. So I would say I have not worked with them in terms of working, but just observing, and I've gone to their events and they market it to me, and I read all the things they send me, and I'm kind of impressed, somewhat impressed with what they can do.
Okay.
So
Do you think they work with like
I agree with
smaller
Roy.
budgets?
I just want to say I agree with Roy. I can't say, because I have not worked with them directly, but I'm just saying I feel they're trustworthy and they're knowledgeable. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks a
Right.
lot. I guess my second question has to do with marketability. Like, basically, the film is an edgy drama, kind of art film. It has some elements of a thriller, and I'm thinking of marketing it as a psychosexual thriller as opposed to drama. Do you think that's kind of a more attractive angle?
Depends on how sexual, if I may say so, because there's always a tendency, and it's if it's like 50 Shades of Grayish and it gets the right buzz, it might work. It might also scare a lot of people off.
Right.
So it's a thin line there. And I actually always thought 50 Shades of Grey was the weather report in the UK, but on a side note, but so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I would have to read it, but I probably would have to read it. It's, that's definitely also a question, like considering that you might be in contact with Buffalo 8, and if they would be looking at that project too, because they have their strategies and their ideas, they would give you valuable input, that's for sure.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you. Yeah.
Thank
Can I
you.
make a question?
Yes, please, Natasha.
Hi, Roy. I
Hi.
just would like if you could give me any tip to how direction I should look to find where's the investors they would like to invest in some low budget films.
Well, it all starts with the good old F&F, friends and family.
Yeah. Okay, past that point, please.
Not surprised. Not surprised. The next one, I'm not a big fan, but sometimes it does make sense, is crowdfunding.
Okay, no, past that. I really want a proper investors. They are entitled to
Good. Now we're
want to.
talking.
We're
Right.
talking like a professional ones, no crowdfund, no family, no friends, a proper investors. They are interested to invest in entertainment, but where can we look for them?
You are where again? You were in the UK too, right?
Yes.
Well, high net worth individuals. So anybody who's got money.
Okay.
Talk to maybe even your bankers. It's hard to say. That's the hardest part, is always finding money. So
yeah. Well, I don't know if it's the hardest. I have to be honest. The distribution, it's not easy either. But
true. But if you don't find money, you don't have to put up with that. So
oh yeah, that's true. It's all the states is quite a difficult one. But anyway,
right.
Okay, so you don't really have a route to where we can really find the investors.
Well, there are certain companies that raise money under the EIS and SEIS schemes that are out there, and if you might want to approach them as co-producers. What have you done so far in that direction, if I may ask?
No, none. I
nothing.
just keeping here people in Cannes. I was just in Cannes as well, and people.
Oh, yeah, good.
Oh yeah, you should find some. Oh yeah, where's the ways to raise money at the moment? Yeah, you should find some investors and blah blah blah. I say, well, okay, where is these investors? I never crossed any of them, and I've been working in this for 20 years. Where is these investors?
I know. Yeah.
So
how much money are you looking for?
No, I'm just curious now, but I don't know, a budget around 200, 300,000 is not much. It's a low budget films.
Yeah. Well, you could actually also approach if it's in relationship to some industry, for example. If it's, you could have maybe, I don't know, if the people sit out in a pub, go to Weatherstone, or if they, or to a cider company and ask if they do that. Look around if they have any money for that available.
Okay, I have an idea now what to do.
Good. Don't forget my commission.
Now, you didn't really help me, Roy. Let's be honest. You're just giving some words in the wind.
That's, you know, that's all, whatever works, you know.
It's a little bit like a brainstorm.
Right, right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and talk to your banker and listen around who's invested in firms and check your community, you know, ask.
Yeah, good
Right.
idea.
Just
See
don't
you.
ask other producers because they'll never tell you.
Yeah, well, I was expecting you could tell me, Roy.
But let me check. Not this week.
Okay.
All right. Gabriele, anything we can do for you?
I'm just listening and trying to learn.
Okay.
It's been so interesting to follow your speech.
Thank you.
I learned so much.
Great. All right, guys, in that case, if you really liked it, I'm always happy for positive reviews. No doubt about that, but no, don't feel forced to that. What else is there? I will be sending out information about the 6-part series if you're interested. That would be starting Tuesday, a week from today. And they will also be recorded, so you will have access, like if you missed part of it, whatever, we can do that. If there are no further questions, I would do the right thing and have my pizza, calabrese, Gabriele, so you know what I need.
Yeah.
And yeah, any further questions, shoot them now.
No, Roy, no question. Are you going to make accessible this all the plates that you put in the QA and everything, all the formats that you put in the scheme?
Not this one right now, but for the seminar, I will do that. Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
not this one. Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you, Gabriele. I saw you in the chat. Grazie. Natasha,
Grazie.
yeah, okay. Takako, thank you very much.
Thank you so
And
much.
Also, you can, if you're not on it, you can please join the firmportal.com if you like.
Okay.
And we'll be doing more with that too. And we used to have, as Bruce knows, we always used to have parties in camp. So we have about a year to prepare for that, because 2023 will be big again. And if there's anything else, you got my email. I'll be sending everything out. You know, usually these things are like between 45 minutes and not even an hour. We're almost here 2 hours. And I want to thank all of you because I really enjoyed it. Can't say that. That's thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much again.
Thank
All
you.
right. See you eventually. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.